So I want to welcome everyone to the Livewell Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition's Coffee with the Coalition Forum. This is an open and informal discussion about substance use disorders and related topics and concerns within the Kalkaska community in Northern Michigan. So I'd like everybody except for our speakers to introduce yourself. Let's start with Linda.
Hello, good morning. My name is Linda Solom, and I'm a substance use disorder prevention specialist with Up North Prevention, an initiative of Catholic Human Services. And I'm also working with the Coalition to Combat Human Trafficking.
All right, thanks, Linda. Tim?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Hudson. I'm with Michigan Opioid Collaborative, the University of Michigan. I cover the northern lower 21 counties.
John? Yeah, you're still on mute.
There we go. John Supernaw. I'm a peer recovery coach with Catholic Human Services. I also run a couple resource tables around Traverse City, one's at our offices on Hastings, and another one is at the Methodist Church on Cass. And these are just information tables loaded up with as much information as I can possibly get onto the table for anybody who wants to pop in and is looking for information, anything from food, clothing, health, recovery, all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of the community contact with the Grand Traverse area, Antrim, and Kalkaska area for Catholic Human Services.
All right, thanks, John. Belinda?
I am a prevention specialist with Catholic Human Services. I work closely with Suzanne as an assistant. I'm also a trained peer recovery coach. I don't use that, like I haven't, hired in or tried to get hired into a company to utilize that.
And she's been a big help for me because we have a lot to do. All right, thanks, Belinda. So I'm going to introduce our speakers now. Today we're welcoming once again Bonnie Zabel, Northern Michigan Regional Coordinator for Nation Outside, and Jessica Henry, Manager of Engagements and Mid-Michigan Regional Coordinator. They will be presenting an overview of Nation Outside's missions and goals and giving an insight to some of the current criminal justice reform legislative bills. Jessica will be sharing her housing story and discuss new initiatives and pilot programs. And we actually had Bonnie and Jessica on before, and I decided to have them come back because for some reason, we couldn't record it. And I really wanted to get this recorded and placed on the Up North Prevention YouTube channel. So that's why we're having them come back. And I'm sure there's some new information. It's been a few months. So go ahead, take it away.
Very true, Suzanne. Thank you. Yes, hi, I am Bonnie Zabel. I am the Northern Michigan Regional Coordinator for Nation Outside. And in a nutshell, we are a statewide grassroots advocacy organization entirely led by justice impacted as myself, as well as formerly incarcerated. And we drive policy that breaks down barriers for our justice impacted people and their communities. So what we do is we go and change policy in Lansing and do legislation. But to do that, we need to build our community support system and find out within our community and our injustice impacted community what the barriers are, what they're facing. Each community is similar but yet unique in their challenges that they face within their community within the state. So we have different locations throughout the state that we work directly. We have chapter meetings and we come together to find out where we need to change policy, and then work directly with community organizations to implement those policies. So mainly what we focus on at this juncture is the collateral consequences that our incarcerated individuals returning home that have a criminal history face, and the barriers that we find within the communities that continue to not have the progression that we need to see to be successful, and for communities to incorporate our ability to not have the barriers that we face coming home. So that includes voting, letting know and educating on voting rights, and also going into jails and doing jail-based voting. Housing is one of the biggest barriers for completing success in organizing and staying in the community, and just access to housing, which, you know, you guys have all been, I've seen you all at different meetings on housing in the area, and we know that's a big barrier across the board. Also, as well as a barrier to employment, second chance employment, and working with businesses to hire returning citizens. And then we also have a program where we are doing peer-led reentry and sustainable community-based led entry on that. So we got a lot going on. You know, we want to see our communities that are safe and vibrant, and all people that are treated with dignity and respect and justice and fairness across the board. So those are some of the key areas that we're focused on. And personally, for myself being up in the Northern Michigan, my personal goal for 2023 is to grow more awareness across Northern Michigan, and kind of connect Northern Michigan to Lower Michigan, so we can really truly be statewide advocacy for all the changes that we're trying to see. So I recently was in Marquette, so that is definitely new since I was on here last, and they're facing the same problems that we're facing here in our county. And so if we can just figure out, maybe all have come together and have these conversations, we can figure out statewide how to really impact these issues. Maybe something's working in this community that we haven't tried here, or we're doing something that they haven't tried there. So I'd really love to bridge that gap in trying my best with Nation Outside's help to kind of bring that together and bring those resources. And it's going to be an ongoing endeavor to be able to do that. But just starting in Marquette to build those relationships and see if we can do some bringing the state as a whole together. That's how we change legislative policy, obviously our voting rights, and educating people that they have a right to vote. Here in Michigan, that is one thing that the state has definitely gotten right, that as soon as you come out of those prison doors, you have your right to vote. And there are many people across Michigan that do not understand that, because that's not what you hear on the news. But even during incarceration in jail, once you've been charged but you haven't been convicted of anything, you still have your right to vote. So we have been building those relationships to go into different communities and do jail-based voting. So I am going to introduce Jessica. She herself is formerly incarcerated. I am just as impacted as my son, who is incarcerated. So I'm learning this system through my son, but Jessica has hands-on experience. She brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to our Nation Outside team. I'm enjoyed just being her partnership with her and learning from her and what she brings to the table. So I'd love to introduce her and have her share some of her impactful experiences that will help you guys understand a little bit more about what we do. So Jessica.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thanks everybody for having me here today. So I am Jessica Henry. I'm the Mid-Michigan Regional Coordinator and Manager of Engagement for Nation Outside. We are statewide. We have 10 regions across the state. So we're in Traverse City, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Flint, Detroit, Lansing, Jackson, Oakland County, Washtenaw County, and there are 31 prisons in the state of Michigan. And out of those 31 prisons, there's only one for women, and it's called Huron Valley Women's Facility. And so just to play on words, we call that chapter the Valley Girls. And any woman who is formerly incarcerated is in that group. And the first hour of that chapter meeting, we do like we do in the rest of the regions, we have a chapter meeting. But the second hour is a support group only for formerly incarcerated females. So, who can relate better than somebody who's been in that same position? So those are our chapters. And basically, we have the same cohesive setup in our chapters. We talk about our mission, our vision, our goals, what initiatives we have, and what policies we're working on. So one of our big policies that we're working on right now is called Fair Chance Housing. And over 2 million people in Michigan have a criminal record, and as a result, face barriers to employment, food, and shelter. Nearly 45,000 laws and statutes face people returning home from prison and exclude them from access to basic life necessities. While efforts are being made by state and local reformers to address barriers to employment, people with records often struggle to find safe and affordable housing. The result is that formerly incarcerated people often accept living in dangerous, dilapidated, and yet overpriced housing or becoming homeless. In fact, recent research has shown that formerly incarcerated people are 10 times more likely to experience homelessness than the general population. And other research, 79% of the study's participants were denied housing based on their own or a family member's conviction history. The Fair Chance Housing Ordinance seeks to expand housing opportunities for people with records who have served their time and are seeking to provide for themselves and their families. So what does the Fair Chance Housing Ordinance do? It does 4 things. Number 1, it prohibits landlords from asking potential tenants about their conviction history during the initial screening process. Number 2, it postpones any background check until a conditional lease is offered. Number 3, it prevents landlords from unfairly denying applicants housing solely based on their criminal history, unless that record would impact public safety, property, or other tenants adversely. And number 4, it allows potential tenants to offer evidence of rehabilitation prior to final denial by the landlord. And this is important because stable and safe housing leads to reduced recidivism and increased public safety. When formerly incarcerated people have access to secure housing, they are more likely to be employed. And communities are more stable and economically viable when people have access to housing, jobs, and education. Yes, I read that. I just wanted to get it all, worded right. If you guys have any questions after I'm done with my story or whatever, I'm open to that. So why housing is important to me personally. I was incarcerated. I'm 40. I've done 9 years total incarcerated. May was my 8-year sober date. So I have been through some things. I went to prison right before my daughter turned 16 last, and I didn't get out until after she turned 21. While I was in there, I was able to get my college education, and that's what saved my life. Before that, I was in jail 8 times. I was in prison twice. I was in 5 outpatient rehabs, 3 inpatient rehabs. And I knew the only thing getting in my own way besides myself was my environment. And you know what they say in recovery, you got to change your people, places, and things. And, it took a while to get it right. And I finally did. My daughter had told me, Mom, how can you love or help anything else in life if you can't love and help yourself? So I moved away from Detroit, where I was born and raised, and I came to Jackson, Michigan. I didn't even know there was a Jackson in Michigan. I thought it was in Mississippi. So here I am in Jackson, Michigan. I just graduated with my bachelor's degree in social work, and I live currently on campus in student housing at Spring Arbor University. But the only reason I live here is because I'm a student. Everywhere I tried to get an apartment or fill out an application, including paying the fees, I was denied because of my criminal history, even though I had a stack of letters stating that I had been rehabilitated, I'm doing good. My character references were well. I had a bank account finally, which I had never had in my life. I had great income. I had a great credit score. I had been employed the entire time that I had been released from prison, but yet that one mark, they look up your background, they see that mark, and they don't even give you a face-to-face opportunity to sit down with you and meet you as a real person and say, hey, what happened? Are you a safe tenant? So I'm here to change those things. And I'm here to advocate for those, who go through similar struggles. And I know that through Fair Chance Housing, if people have questions and they need to understand what it means, like, what does this mean for the landlord? What does this mean for the tenant? Are all tenants going to be discriminated against? What's a carve out? Is the landlord's property going to be safe? Where are you going to put these people? Are these people going to live next door to me? That's the most question we get. Where are they going to live? So there's a lot of questions, and we've been working on this for over 2 years. The Fair Chance Housing Ordinance has been passed in 4 cities. So it's in Detroit, it's in Kalamazoo, it's in Ann Arbor, and it's in Jackson. And it passed in 2021 in Jackson. And so we're pushing for it statewide. We've been working on this with the Vera Institute. And this week, I'm hoping this week, we will have our House bill number. And that will mean that the House will vote on it. We have 19, I'm hoping 20 representatives that are in support of this. Abraham Ayash is the one who is supporting this bill. And we are hoping for our day Thursday. I'm not sure, and I know this is recorded, so yay if it went on Thursday. So if there's any questions about that, I'm open. If there's any questions about anything else, I'm open for that too. But that's me, that's my story, and that's Fair Chance Housing.
Does anybody have
Thanks,
any questions?
Oh, sorry.
No? Go ahead, Bonnie.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so as you can see, as an organization, we definitely are working statewide and really working with community partners to understand each individual community. And as you can tell by Jessica said, we've been able to gather support and get the housing passed in different locations. And that's what is coming into Traverse City and building in Traverse City we've been working towards. And then and thankfully, Traverse City has a wealth of people that are already doing such amazing good work within the county and surrounding areas, such as what yourself. So I've been able to, come on here and get to know some of you guys and understand what's going on and available to you. So some of the organizations that I work closely with in the Traverse City area is BDAI. So they do before, during, and after incarceration is what BDAI stands for. They actually go into the county jails and they do mentoring inside, and then also stay involved with those individuals when they've returned home. And that is very successful to be able to have those connections, give some people a tangible connection that really aids in their support system when they come home. And staying involved gives them an opportunity to have that connection. So I work with them. I also work with Keys to Freedom. That's Tina McCauley. She's the chaplain that actually works inside of the Grand Traverse County Jail and does some of the same type of mentoring and has built programs inside the county jail. And then she also works with recovery homes in the community, and they just opened a new one as well. And I'm being told, as we continue to work on Fair Chance Housing, the housing ordinance, that recovery homes are really seeing a lot of success. So I'm hoping that as we continue to build in the Traverse City area, that it's going to expand into the outlying communities within the Grand Traverse County. And as we continue to see success of how to do something in this area that we can again work together to do those in other communities and continue to see some healing and growth in that area within the communities. And then more recently, I've been working with SALT, which is an organization that's come together, the spiritual activists leading together. And they have brought me in and I've been fortunate to work with them. They have a housing group and a voting group, and really able to expand what I'm doing as Nation Outside through that coalition and continuing to work within the community on that. So they have brought me in, but I also have had them come to my chapter meetings. So I have developed chapter meetings in the Traverse City area. So I do meet every Tuesday, the last Tuesday of every month at the Porch, which is addiction treatment services. That is a location that everybody can come to. They have wonderful programs there, and they have afforded me a space the last Tuesday of every month from 5:45 to 7 p.m. So, which happens to be tonight is my next meeting. So anybody that would love to join me, I do bring pizza and pop, usually snacks, and then great conversation. My meeting last month, in walks this gentleman. His name is George Walker. He did 35 years and had only been home a week. And he walked into that chapter meeting, and what an amazing conversation that was. And able to build and hear directly from him, you know, what he's facing moving forward, and trying to find him some connections within the community that can help him be successful. So there's a lot going on. But the other thing I wanted to go ahead and do a little bit more on, thankfully, Nation Outside has given me and afforded me the opportunity to kind of be the legislative liaison. I work with lots of different organizations that are doing amazing advocacy work in the form of criminal justice reform. I attend meetings for the Voting Access for All Coalition every week, and that is Fridays at 12:30, and they come together, and it's community partners across the state that are all, you know, in this same desire to really create change. And with that coalition, we're really working on just coming together to understand the needs. And it's been blessed to be able to do that. And then I also work with the NLA, which is the National Lifers of America Association. So I have direct contact with our incarcerated men and women and get their voice represented when I go to these different meetings and find out where we're at to be able to make the policy changes in Lansing and go and lobby for that. And then again, I already said that I had a personal goal of growing Northern Michigan and connecting to Lower Michigan. So I started the People of Action Coalition that will hopefully be able to grow and afford getting to all the different counties to educate people on the different issues that we are facing, and just understanding how to change legislation and why your vote matters and what your vote can really do. So with that, if we still have a little bit of time, some of the things that since we've met last time that have changed in Lansing, we just actually did get passed a bill that all parolees will now receive a license or a state ID when they come home. And I'm sure Jessica can contest to the fact that that has been across the years and throughout history a difficult thing. So I've heard stories of it's taken over a year to be able to get a license, and without a license, you know, it's difficult to do anything. So to be able to come home and have that in hand is already going to strengthen the ability to continue to go down the right path and get the things that we need, housing and a job and all of those things that are going to be a successful path. There has been a development of a state sentencing commission. Michigan is one of the only state that hasn't had our relook at how we structure our sentences in over 30 years.
Wow.
So this is big. This is really big that we're going to get this sentencing commission put together. It's going to be experts from all different genres that are going to come together that, some of the impact of the different consequences that we have, and put together a sentencing structure that hopefully will make more sense. We are, by large, our state, incident to incident, we sentence longer than any other state for each individual crime across the board. So I know this has been something that I'm looking forward to see what they come back with, and hopefully we can hold accountability to what those sentencing structures look like, and be more fair in that sentencing structure. And across the counties, the different disparity in county to county of what each individual sentence for each individual crime is a large disparity, across the state and county to county. So that should rectify some of that. And then personally, like I said, it's my son that's incarcerated. So I am working really, really diligent on, we have a bill right now that we're trying to get passed called Ending Juvenile Life Without Parole. So again, we are a state that still sentences our juveniles to an actual life sentence. And what I've been trying to do is educate people that 75% of our juveniles are in under a felony murder statute. And I know as a mom, when my son was charged with that, I had no clue what that statute was. And most people that I talk to have never heard of it as well. So in a condensed version, during the act of felony, if somebody dies, doesn't matter how they die or what your part in participation in that underlying felony, if you are even loosely associated to that, you can be found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. So in a courtroom, it is the lowest burden of proof on the prosecutor to prove that, but has the highest penalty. So it automatically elevates it to a mandatory life without parole sentence. And that's what many of our juveniles are in for. They may have been the lookout, tagged along with an older sibling, been in, like George Walker that came home. He was in the car, didn't know the guy in the front seat had a gun, drive-by shooting, pow, pow, and away they went. So they all, went to court. So here's George, like, I had no knowledge of it. I didn't understand that was happening. So he fought for his innocence. And unfortunately, with felony murder, like I said, it's the lowest bar. You were there, you were present, a felony happened, a death occurred, and prosecutors are getting a life sentence off of that. So he did 35 years and just came home. He was 18. So that is something that also has happened through the Pools and Parks case, that we now include 18-year-olds within our juvenile sentencing structure. So he was out of Washtenaw County, and that prosecutor had 4 cases when that was passed, and he resentenced them all, and they all came home. And George came home to the Traverse City area. So I'm working hard on that, and we have had a hearing in both the House and the Senate, and we hope to have a second hearing and see if we can get that passed. There's also a bill for a second look legislation that is very similar to the juvenile, that after you've done a decade of time, you can petition your sentencing court for an opportunity to start the parole process. So it's a 2 opportunity of the sentencing judge will look over your case, see what you've done in that decade of time inside, and then either grant you the ability to start the parole process or give you a denial at that point, but give you steps to be able to reapply at least 2 years now and work towards the things that he or she may have felt that you needed to continue to work on to be able to be eligible to start that process. And then, as you know, we've done for a very long time, also there's bills to get good time passed. Michigan is a truth in sentencing state. We're the only state, again, that 100% truth in sentencing, and our incarcerated men and women have no ability to earn any time off of their sentence. We're a mandatory sentencing state. longest sentencing state and mandatory minimum state. So we have a system that is very punishable and overly punished compared to many of the other states. So that's kind of what we're working on and looking at, that I update and do. Citizens for Prison Reform has many bills that are helping our conditions inside the prison. Unfortunately, it's a very inhumane system, again, a very punishable system, and that is within how our men and women are treated on the inside as well. So they are doing some great strides. They have a ending solitary confinement bill and an oversight committee. One thing that I know I didn't understand, and most general population doesn't understand, MDOC, it's its own identity. They have no one that comes in and oversees them. They can basically do within their own policy and how they want to dictate that policy. So we do have a bill to create an oversight committee that there would be outside influences and ability to go in and monitor what's happening and have a say in how the practices are run and the policies are written. And that would be able to have potential to, even as we're changing policy, there's nobody mandating that MDOC impactively involves those policies. So this would create the ability to do that. So there's lots more, but those are kind of the general ones that would be most impactful that Nation Outside supports on the legislative side, as we're working to continue the returning services and the housing barriers and voting rights that we do hands-on, but we support the work that also impact our inside and coming home. So I'll stop there. Any other questions or anything more, Jessica and I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
For the MDOC, that's a bill, or what exactly is it? Like, I think that's really important because, talking to a lot of different people over the last couple of years, and it is the inside conditions that, need a little bit of reining in, and so that, folks aren't treated inhumanely. So that's a bill that Nation Outside is working on, like there'd be an like a board who they'd have to answer to. Like, I think that's really cool, but is that what I heard? Is that what I understand?
Yes, exactly. So it's a bill that we support. So Citizens for Prison Reform, they do a lot of legislative bills for the conditions on the inside. So that is through the Oversight Committee. Senator McBroom was the champion of it last session. We just didn't get it moved and passed last session. And it would be creating an actual committee that would have oversight, that they would meet to hold MDOC a little more accountable to implement the changes, the policies and laws that are changed, as well as, like right now, you have to give them a 3-day notice if any of our legislators want to go in and actually tour and see the conditions. They have mandated you have to give a 3-day notice. You can't just do a spontaneous, hey, we're here. And as Jessica can probably contest to, that gives them 3 days to say, hey, clean this up, do that, and be on your best behavior as the people that come through that want to see the conditions. And so this would be able to create that they can go in and be impactful in different areas, and then hold the director accountable to some of the changes that need to be made and identify some of the changes that need to be made.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I totally agree. That's exactly what that 3-day window would be for. It doesn't take a brilliant person to figure that out. And that's too bad. That needs to change. I think it's really awesome what you're doing, Bonnie. It's so cool. A lot of stuff going on.
A lot of information.
Yeah, I'm taking notes. I did have one more question on the fair chance housing. She had rattled off like 4: Detroit, I thought Flint, something. Now, how is that presented? Is that like per county? You have to go to a meeting? Like, how did you get that passed, say, like in Detroit? Who did you go in front of?
Go ahead,
So-
Ms. Jessica.
That gets passed for the city council. So city council will vote on that, just like in Jackson. So we had a hand in passing it in Jackson. So it's Jackson, Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Kalamazoo,
Oh,
where
yeah.
the fair chance housing ordinances are right now. But you bring a resolution in front of city council, and then city council, goes over it, and then they vote on it.
Okay, thank you so much for the information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that. So part of doing the chapter meetings is to create that groundwork of that support system. So when we create a resolution for the Traverse City, then hopefully I have that support system that we go and fill that city council meeting. So we've been at different times attending the planning commission as well as the city council meetings. I've introduced Nation Outside to them, let them know we're working on this and we'll be bringing it to them, and hopefully do pass it in the city as well as the state legislation that will be introduced statewide as well. So yeah.
Awesome.
And you said your Nations Outside meetings are what, the last
The fourth Tuesday. Yeah, so we have occasionally have a fifth Tuesday, and so yeah, so the fourth Tuesday.
at what
I
time?
did say the last Tuesday, so that is on me, but it is the fourth Tuesday.
Okay. And the time and location? Just for if anybody-
Well, 5:45 to 7 at the porch, which I think is 1010 South Garfield.
Mhm. Okay. And do you have flyers or anything for these meetings that I could share?
Yep, I have a fairly new Traverse City Nation Outside Facebook page.
Okay.
So I share it on there. And then the Nation Outside itself has a Facebook page. It gets shared on there. And then when I come to the area and do different events, I usually print them off and pass them out. So I went to the Juneteenth event and passed out a whole bunch of flyers for the next for this coming one today. So I just try to pass them out in different areas. I've got a couple people on the ground that take them to different locations. Most of the like thrift stores, they let me leave them on their counter, and try to do any bulletin board that'll leave them up, and just try to generate some stuff that way. But like John said, I actually have wheat tables. So I was just in the last Groundtown Traverse. I think that one was called Arts and Crafts. And I will be at the July 2nd Cherry Festival at the Downtown Authority. Arts and Crafts, I guess it is. And I try to do like John has. So I have part of my table that if you guys have a brochure or something for your organization that you have some extras you can share with me, I put those on my tables, and I'll anybody that comes up and talk about the community partners and resources that are in the community for them to be able to access. So I love to do that on my tables as well. So I'd love to get together with John and see if we can share some resources and be able to tell more people that come to the table what's in the community, because that does surprise me how often people come to the table and they don't know what's available and the resources that they have. So that reminds me, I should actually print off the food pantries. Would be a great thing to have on the table, I think, for different areas of the, you guys have, we have a wealth of distribution of food within the county. That would be a good thing to have on my table that I don't currently have. So thank you for letting me talk out loud and give myself.
All right.
Thank you.
Linda's got a question.
Yes, whereabouts are you going to be located? And I'll come by your table. I do have some flyers, and I'd be happy to stand around with you a little bit or whatever. But Yeah, do you know where
Yes.
you're going to be located?
I do not yet. This last one, I think it was like 2 or 3 days before they sent out my actual number. So when I get that, I can share it with Suzanne, and then I can give you where I'm sure I won't be in the same spot, but actually I
Yeah.
think they're on a different street. But as soon as I know that, I can put it out and share it. And you're more than welcome to come. I had BDAI came, Keys to Freedom came, so we were all there. I share my space and table, and talk to as many people as we can talk to. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So thanks for opening up your table to partner like
Yeah.
that. It's great.
No problem. I love
Oh.
doing that.
Does the Grand Traverse chapter cover what areas? Like, does it cover Kalkaska or, like the surrounding?
Well, right now I'm primarily in Traverse City, but I am willing to partner and get resources out far and wide. So
Okay.
that's me doing that. But eventually, obviously, our hope is to continue to grow. So right now, starting in Traverse City, getting a base, and then hopefully the plan is to then hire like an engagement specialist that I can leave in Traverse City as I continue to move Cadillac, Kalkaska, and continue to move across and generate more chapters throughout northern Michigan. So that's on the radar, but right now I'm primarily in Traverse City, but trying to grow ground base to where we could move next, and the need for next. But in the meantime, anything I can share or I can reach and tangibly get to, I will certainly share that information. And I mean, the Cherry Festival, craft shows, there were people that came to my table from all over the state, and this past weekend. So I'll get them down and pass them if we have a chapter in that area, or we have a monthly newsletter that goes out. So we have an email loop that they can get on and learn more about what's going on. And I've had people say, well, when you get your city council meeting, I'll come represent. So that's what we can do for each other, is just continue to spread the resources and meetings and things that are out there for growing the base of volunteers and support.
Kalkaska is kind of unique right now because our jail's closed down, and we're sending our already sentenced are going to Leelanau County, and our individuals waiting sentencing are down in Wexford County. And I've heard that they're going to be changing that, and I can't remember which county, Osceola County, I think. Is that like 2.5 hours away, something like that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's where they're talking about sending them out.
Oh, no.
And that makes it hard on families.
Yes, it does.
Our sheriff's department has really made a lot of changes, and it's really not the sheriff's fault that things are, like this. I think it's more the county commissioners aren't giving the finances to do what they need to do for our jail. But as a county, we should have our own jail, and the family
Yes.
shouldn't have to drive hours, or I don't know. And I think these video visitations are they're just they're hard for children, for one, when they can only see their parents on a video. I think people should have the opportunity to visit their loved ones, even if it's behind glass, face to face. The cost.
I personally agree. Yes, I agree as well. I call them video calls. I don't like to call them visits, because to me, it's not a tangible visit. It's a video
Yeah, and I
call.
know Grand Traverse County, a lot of times those calls don't get through, and you still get charged for it. So
Yeah.
for connection, I think, as far as we should be supporting families, and when some of the things that they're doing, it actually completely breaks the family up. It doesn't support the family. So
Yeah, that Citizens for Prison Reform, they primarily work in the prison system.
Mhm.
but they do a monthly Zoom meeting as well for family support. And Lois is really kind of connected across the state to even on the jail level. So if there was someone that had some questions, she would be possibly a resource. Or if you've got information that might help her in what she's doing, that would be a great connection to have. And I'm sure if that was there, that we could grow that portion of it at the jail level across the state. I just don't know of any org that's kind of doing the knowledge base of the jail. I don't know if each county is so different that's not something that can be developed.
Mhm.
But she definitely works on and tries to grow and awareness to family support through Citizens for Prison Reform. They do some great work.
Yeah. Tim, what's your thoughts? I mean, you used to work with families on like children, seeing their parents on a video rather in person, and how it might affect them, maybe with trauma and not being able to have that connection with that parent.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a potential of the loss of the emotional bond there, not having that physical touch to it. Is certainly impactful. It's also scary, right? Different levels of scary depending on the age of the child, certainly, of understanding of, well, why can't I see mom? Why can't I see dad? Why am I only seeing them over a phone versus in person? Certainly there's still a lull of that when they're going to a jail that you kind of have to explain to a young child of kind of what that means, what that looks like. But that can be done. It is done successfully. But yeah, there's certainly significant concerns about that emotional bond and how that's impacting if a child isn't able to physically touch mom or dad for long periods of time while mom or dad are in jail, and it's strictly just done over video phone or telephone and things like that. That can have some and then that then in turn has long-term consequences on that child as they move throughout their life course.
Yeah. I think, it probably take time to change things, but we need to start focusing on the whole family structure. It's all about punishing the person that's incarcerated, and there's no real thought about the family that's involved in this. And they really need to start thinking about that and how it's affecting our youth and developing trauma. And I mean, we should be all about building resilience, right, in our kids. So just a thought. Thanks, Tim.
Well, and Suzanne, it goes both ways. I just met a mom that hasn't seen her son in 5 years, and we've instituted the video calls, but she doesn't know how to do it. She doesn't know how to set it up. She doesn't. So, that's impactful on the other end. And that's not the only story I've heard like that. I mean, I know for my son, he lost his visits for 4 years, so I didn't see him for almost 5 years. And now the prison system has gone to an online scheduling. And so there's many people that don't have access to the internet to even schedule to be able to go. And right now, MDOC is saying they're not going to go back to pre-COVID standards where you can just show up and visit. So many people haven't seen their loved ones since COVID. And I know my grandma, so my son's great grandma, who's 103, we couldn't get her on the system to be able to get her to, so I had to call and spend time on the phone. And thankfully, I had 2 people, nope, she can't do it for you. And when I called the person the 3rd time with the information the other 2 told me I needed to have, so I had to wait till I got to my grandma and have it. And that lady didn't need any of that. She just did it for me. And she was like, I understand. So clearly there's a way to do it, but they're not even, depending on who you get on the other line, whether they want to do that. And maybe she was breaking the rules for me. I don't know, but I was very grateful. And he's been able to see his, 103-year-old great grandmother that he hadn't seen in 5 years. But access to the videos, I'm thankful and grateful to have that when you don't have the ability to. Some people have to drive, 5-8 hours, and they can't do that. So I do think that is a way to have the connection that we were missing, but not in void of being able to go in person. You have to have both.
So can they are allowing in-person visits though, correct? It's just.
Yes, they
jump through
have.
more hoops now.
Yes, you have to schedule online, and you can't do it more than a week out, but then you have to do it within a 72-hour period. And then, people are all vying for those few spots that are there, and they're only doing 2-hour windows, where before you could stay, up to 8 hours.
Mhm.
And now it's a 2-hour block. They have opened up to allow you to do 2 back-to-back, so you could do 4 hours, but that also now constitutes 2 of your visits. Instead of it, even though it's on the same day, they're making you use 2 visits to have 4 hours with your loved one.
Right, so you have a family that's driving from northern Michigan down to Jackson that takes hours, probably has to get a hotel, and you're only getting a couple of hours with that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're not really thinking about the whole family structure and how it's not only making it hard on the inmate, but the whole family.
Yeah, and every time, again, Citizens for Prison Reform does a lot of work in that area, and I do a lot of advocacy work with them and volunteer with them. And every time we push, MDOC fights us, and they actually are like, well, you have to change, go to legislation and change that. And if, right on your page that says how you care about the connections, and we know how much that family connection can be impactful, and they seem to fight. So they don't even follow their own, guidelines of what they say is necessary and what they say they do, unfortunately.
Right. Well, this has been quite interesting. Does anybody else have any more questions or comments? No? Okay, go ahead, Linda.
I just thought of something. What did you call your coalition?
The People of Action Coalition.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a name I kind of put together. I've had one event so far, which was up in Marquette. The Prison Creative Arts Program partnered with me. So I actually have a traveling art show exhibit that they have. I think there's 21 pieces of art. So I have that ability to take it in, and it's artwork that they have gotten permission over. I think they've been doing that 20 plus years. I don't remember the exact number. So over the time that people have either donated back to them, or they've been able to get the rights to and hang it up. And so it was very impactful. I worked with the Marquette Poetry Society, and what they did that was a step above. They actually, as poets, they wrote original poetry based off of their interpretation of that artwork. So for an entire month, the public library up there had the artwork up, had the poems there that you could come and look at. And then we did an evening where they recited their poems. And I had, over 60 people in the room. Senator McBroom came. He was very supportive. So I got news media to come for 2 nights. We were on the news media and very the leading story. And then the next day I did a resource fair and a coffee hour. I went into a coffee shop, opened their doors to us, and we went in. So I had any addiction treatment services were there. Mental health was there. They actually, for their homeless, their churches have come together. And this is what they've figured out. They literally, month at a time, they have mattresses that they put at each location, and they bring in these mattresses. The homeless can come in and they're welcome to use these. And then at the end of that month, literally they have volunteers that carry these mattresses up the steps, load them up, and take them to the next church for a month. But that's not sustainable. So they're really working on their homeless population. And Rep Jen Hill is her name. She's new to being a legislator, but not new to advocacy work. She came and spent 3 hours with us in that community to really hear and resonate what's going on and how to create changes, not in the community, but also at the Lansing level. And you don't hear that all the time, you know? And so again, news media was there, they got interviewed. So it has the capacity to generate some real education and start getting the word out. And then I went back and did a second event that was there was over 100 vendors at it. And I had 3 people come to the table and say, "Weren't you on the news recently?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm like a celebrity or something." But, so that was kind of cool. I was like, I didn't know anybody watched, but okay. So so it can be impactful. It can make a difference. And we just getting out and having the resources to educate the community of what's out there and the needs and the things that are truly going on, I think is really a possibility to create legislation that could have some real impact. But as we all know, it takes volunteers and funding and all of that. So I'm working in the Grand Rapids area and the Detroit area to do another town hall. And then we can talk about the bills and educate people on the bills that are out there, and just the need for change.
I've got another question. We're talking about the art, and we know that art is used for therapy. Has there been changes with increasing therapy within the prison system, with our increased knowledge about trauma and ACEs and resilience? Have they been looking at this with the people inside the prison system, and changing, you know, the way they do things, and you know, having that system actually understand, you know, that trauma aspect with inmates?
I definitely think it's being talked about. I don't know that there has been anything that MBOC has created. They do have some courses, but again, one of the issues is programming is very difficult to get into. You don't get into programming until you are close to your release date. And so a lot of individuals can't get into that programming until they're a year away from coming home. So like I said, my son's been in 9 years now. He just got into 2 classes. He has signed up since he's been in there every single time, and he gets bumped because he has a long sentence. So someone that's going to go home sooner is going to take the spot that he asked for, which should happen, right? I'm okay with that. But to just sit there and not have programming, as Jessica said, education is the key and the foundation to creating that change like you're talking about, Suzanne. So I know there are different things going on, but most of the time that type of stuff happens from the inside. The population inside see the need and they educate each other. So there have been programs that have been developed from inside that definitely help. But I don't have any knowledge right now of anything that's specifically happening. But I see Jessica has her hand up, which I was going to ask her if she had any more in on that. And I'm sure she does. So I'll let her answer.
So I've been home for 3 years. I'm sure there's been some changes made, but due to overcrowding, like Bonnie said, it's hard to get into programming. I do know I specifically was in 2 classes. One's called Healing and Trauma, where they did walk you through your own trauma, they did the ACEs test, you know, but that programming isn't one-on-one like each individual needs. You know, it's here's a manual, do the manual, you pass the course, parole will see that you pass the course and you can go home. And I did another one called Beyond Violence. And because of my case, which was unarmed robbery, I drove away from a robbery. It was set that I had to do this course. And the teacher, the facilitator, she actually invested in us. She, you know, she's like, I'm not going to do this work for y'all. Y'all going to do the work. You know, she came in like real deal and she invested in us. So that's another thing. Like, is the facilitator investing into the pupils, the people who are in the classes. There's also RSAT and there's phase 2, which are both substance use disorder classes. There's another program, but it's specifically for those who are pre-diagnosed with mental health issues, which is DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which I believe every individual, even if you're not incarcerated, you need DBT, because DBT works wonders. It helps you emotion regulate. It helps you be mindful. It helps you have interpersonal relations, and if people can be offered that while they're incarcerated, it would set the environment at a calm tone,
Right, that's what I was wondering. Do they offer something like this at the end or the beginning? Because it should be offered at the beginning to help the person through what they're going through.
And it does not. It depends on like Bonnie was saying, it depends on your release date. It depends on where you fall, if you're in school. It depends on if you're taking a vocational. How does it align with your schedule? I had 5 years in, and so the way my classes were set up, sometimes you're taking 2 classes at once, and it's usually towards the end of your sentence, which is, not ideal for healing.
The therapies need to start immediately.
And everybody needs therapy. Everybody, you're there for a reason. There's a root cause to your situation, to what happened, whether it was intentional or not. Whatever happened, it happened. And now there's trauma because of that. Walking through those doors is trauma. Can we address that? Laying your head down at night in that place is trauma. Can we address that? Can we have someone to talk to that can actually give us their attention instead of your caseload? I'm done. I just came into work today. So like therapy, it's huge. Like, I'm on a soapbox because being there, when you want it, you have to take it for yourself if you're going to get it. And the only way I was able to change was through my education personally. So people have to find what they can take in there, and make that work for them. And it took me try upon try upon try upon try till I finally was able to make something, change.
Right. Well, thank you.
I do know that they have started in different locations, the MAT program. They are offering that. But that's, has obviously parameters for you to get in it. And I know one of the guys I advocate for, he's close to coming home, so they're willing to put him in it. But they drug tested him before he got to the program, which, he was self-medicating, and which unfortunately the drugs inside to be able to self-medicate are rapid. So that don't even get me on that conversation right now, because that's more than another hour. But unfortunate was he was upset because he didn't pass the drug test. So they gave him a class 1 ticket when he's asking for help and to get into the program, so he can, because he's close to coming home, so he wants to get into it. But they penalize him to get into the program. They let him in, but they still gave him a class 1 ticket. So now he's worried about, is that going to affect his ability to come home? So even asking for help, knowing he needs help, they're offering the help, but they're going to punish him before they give him the help.
Right. Yeah, I know. I was here. Well, at least, so-and-so, they're in prison, so they're not going to get any drugs. That's like the biggest lie out there. They're just as available in there. Well, does anybody else have any questions or comments? We're a little bit past our time. It's 10:05. So if there's not any other questions or comments, our next meeting or Coffee with the Coalition forum is going to be on Tuesday, July 25th at 9 a.m. I'm not yet sure who we're going to have as a speaker. I have to figure that out yet. But I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Jessica and Bonnie. A lot of information, really good information. So I am going to stop.